Good afternoon, everybody. This is Adrienne Montgomery with ERP VAR. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We really appreciate it. We're going to be talking about Acumatica, automated procurement, and shipping today. I'm so pleased to be joined by Fraction and Starship. And just a couple items here before we have the speakers take it away. We're joined by Stanton Jandrel. He's the CEO of Fraction. And many of you might know Fraction. It's formerly known as eRequester, and eRequester was recently acquired by Fraction. And Matt St. John, sales executive over at Starship. We're going to be talking about the procurement with Fraction and the shipping with Starship. Just a little bit about the companies here. Fraction is a trusted and proven requisition, purchase order, and expense management solution. They perform their automation across horizontal industries worldwide, and it simplifies the spend management processes for users, and it gives the administrators and accounting the control they need to maintain those compliance initiatives and boost efficiency. A little bit about Starship here. V Technologies is the developer of Starship. It was founded in 1987, and Starship provides the multi-carrier shipping software interface that connects the warehouse to the front office. And they have dozens of parcel and LTL carrier partnerships with DHL, FedEx, Holland, USPS, UPS, YRC, OnTrack, Pitt, Ohio, and many more. And they provide that integration that's key to reduce that duplicate data entry and eliminate it between Acumatica. They also have interfaces with Dynamics GP, Sage, QuickBooks, SAP Business One, Epicor, and SysPro. They also facilitate the e-commerce integration with Amazon, eBay, Magento, Shopify, and WooCommerce, where the shipping tracking numbers will populate both the e-commerce interface and the Acumatica interface as well, so that customer service can expedite the necessary tracking numbers, and all the details of shipments can be visible within both the e-commerce packages and Acumatica. And just a little bit about the workflow. We're going to be talking about how an order comes into Acumatica, and Fraction will automate all the procurement that details that go along with that order, automate the purchasing process, requisition to PO, efficiency, budget visibility, and advanced analytics, travel and expense management, punch out, simplicity, and provide that mobile interface to have that visibility where purchasing is, and it has the seamless integration with Acumatica. And then Starship will pick up details of any orders in Acumatica and automate the shipment based on all the rules of the shipment, the best carrier to select to facilitate that shipment based on the dimensional weight, the location of the customer, the cost of the shipment, and all those details. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Stanton to kick it off with Fraction. Thank you so much, Stanton.
Great, Adrienne. Thank you very much for the introduction. All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for your time today. Today I wanted to introduce you to Fraction and the benefits of spend management. And we talk about spend management is slightly different from procurement, although obviously there's strong correlations. The concept behind spend management is one where we try to control as much of the spending activities that take place in a business. Not all of them obviously related to purchase orders, but best practices is to try to get as many of those requisitions processed into purchase orders as efficiently as possible. But when we talk about spend management, we'll go a bit deeper into it. It also includes expense claims. It focuses on capital goods procurements, cash management, a whole variety of spending activities. So a little bit about the company. Fraction is one of the leaders in the sort of mid-market space. We have well over 1,000 customers operating on our applications and have been in business for almost 18 years. So we are one of the very few pure cloud-based spend management providers, and we occupy the space typically below Coupa. So if you're a mid-market customer wanting a solution that is being ranked by Gartner, listed as one of the top 10 global spend management providers, then hopefully Fraction is that customer or that product for you. As one can imagine, in the spend management space, we operate across most sort of communities and industry verticals, but we have a very strong focus on financial services, on non-profit, in communications is particularly strong in our space, as well as education and healthcare. And so wherever there's a significant amount of indirect or non-stock procurement that needs to be dealt with, then Fraction really comes into its own. So when we talk about spend management, we talk about purchase requisitioning. We're also going to cover briefly the expense, claims, and reimburses process. We're going to talk about invoice automation, and automation either where the invoice is associated with the purchase order that we've delivered, or it's a native invoice that's come in as a result of a contract. We're also going to talk about travel as a specific subset of spending, capital goods procurement as well. And then we're going to talk about supplier management. How do we monitor and manage supplier performance and approve and authorize suppliers coming into the system? And then lastly, we'll demonstrate some of our advanced punch-out capabilities and online catalog capabilities, which are just more efficient ways of raising requisitions efficiently. So the reasons why. Why would an organization consider spend management? Well, I suppose at the heart of it, we're trying to optimize what are traditionally manual processes to make them more efficient. But because they are now automated, we're able to leverage the data that we can extract from the system to help managers make the most commercially competent decisions around every spend decision. Part of that would be making sure that managers have insight into the budgetary impact of that spend. That includes spend budgets that are embedded in GL codes, but also if an organization has budgets associated with projects, in non-profits, I suppose, with donors, any dimension that you want to be able to manage spend against, we're able to provide insight into the financial impact of that decision. We've also developed great algorithms to identify risky transactions, and these are transactions that fall outside of the norms for your business. So we are able to layer levels of risk on transactions that tend to be outliers. We're also cognizant of the fact that most managers don't always, even when you provide them with the tools, apply their minds in the best way possible. So we'll demonstrate in the product a concept that we've introduced called active policy management. And active policy management is a system basically monitoring for any number of issues. It might be budget related issues when you're getting to, let's say, 80% of a particular project in a fiscal period or in the year, or it might be something like requests are taking too long to get approved by a particular manager. How do we deal with driving them upwards through the approval chain? Or it could be more complex, looking for duplicate items in invoices. In other words, where an invoice to a particular vendor might have been submitted with varying invoice numbers, but the value remains fairly similar or the same. We also look for number distributions to try identify when numbers appearing on an invoice are unlikely to follow natural distribution patterns. And all of this is to a degree AI-based. In other words, we utilize Microsoft's cognitive services to help us identify these outliers with the goal of trying to change spend management behavior and make sure it's consistent with what the organization hopes to achieve. Hopefully when I run through the product, we'll be able to show you this in more detail. A strong part of what we're all about is automating traditional workflows that take place in the business. Now, there's workflows that are process-orientated workflows. In other words, perhaps if it's capital goods procurement, it's going to appear on my balance sheet. I want more rigor associated with identifying pricing. So maybe I want that routed for RFQs. And so request for quotations and sourcing is an integral part of our application as well. But perhaps for expense claims or reimburses, it's quite simply a routing that goes through my manager. Once it's approved, either paid through AP or through the payroll. So Fraction has implemented Windows Workflow Foundation Builder as the graphical UI that helps drive the choices around process automation. And from a workflow, approvals workflow perspective, we've got some great tools that allow us to approve based on straight dollar amounts, very simple approval workflows that might be at departmental level, or actually approval workflows that can be down to a combination of GL accounts, so down to account description for departments, as well as segments that might not appear in the GL coding structure, like projects or campaigns that one might want to manage. And so we can build fairly sophisticated approval authorization processes for some organizations and fairly simple ones for other organizations. So we're proud to announce that we are one of the only certified spend management solutions for Acumatica. We are also the only true cloud-based spend management solution certified for Acumatica. So if my assumption is that by choosing Acumatica, you've made the decision to move towards the cloud, then we hope that we're a natural partner for this progression. So in closing, before we kick off to the demo itself, I just wanted to share some quotes from our customers and really focusing on the fact that once they've used the system, it becomes super simple to control and manage spend. I'll invite you afterwards to post any kind of questions around how we've been able to help these organizations. So without any further ado, I'm going to kick off into our presentation and actually show you the product in action. Adrian, I'm not too sure if you're able to see the screen. Is this up now in front of everyone?
Yep, we can see it.
Great, thank you so much. Right, so this is our application. It's based on Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. So we have servers in both the US and Western Europe, as well as in Africa, and really able to support jurisdictional issues that may be of a concern for organizations. The demo that we've got today has a whole variety of requisition types, and these can be configured and turned on and off for customers by our partners or by ourselves directly. So we have purchase requisitioning, we've got expense claims, we've got PTO, we've got travel requisitioning, capital goods procurement, some minor time management and cash advances. Now these don't need to be all configured. These are set literally at a tenant level. So perhaps the best way to demonstrate the solution is to create a requisition and run you through what a manager would see from an approvals or authorizations process. I just want to size the screen a bit, and you'll notice that it's changing relative to the size of the screen, and that's because we run a mobile-friendly UI called Bootstrap that automatically changes the application depending on the size of the device that it operates on. So we scale particularly well down to tablets and to large form cell phones as well. Right, so let's go buy goods and services. By the way, you'll notice everything has got non-accounting terms, and that's really to push and drive our usability of the application. And if time permits, I'll show you some of the supporting tools that we have in terms of in-app knowledge bases to help users gain familiarity and comfort with this application. But let's go buy some goods and services. All right, so we're going to buy maybe some Acumatica licenses. Now, Fraction allows 3 different ways for requisitions to be populated. We can go via catalog, which I'll show you, via punch out, and via free format. So the first request I'm going to do is really via free format. It's probably a bit easier. So in this particular instance, we're going to ask for goods or services. You'll notice that it asked me to define goods or services. Basically, we have the capability of receiving services at a value base as opposed to a unit item base. So maybe we just want extra user license. When do we require it? Urgently, of course, what the approval routing is. And in this particular environment, I've set a very simple approval routing, but it can be linked to any dimension, whether it's GL codes, projects, or what have you. And we're going to buy maybe 10 licenses at $199 each. Who's our vendor? Well, this is the first part of what we do. In this demo site, we have a limited number of vendors, but this would feed directly from the Acumatica vendor list. And if as a result of a sourcing event, we had identified a vendor that we hadn't done business with, and we wanted to bring them on board. We could kick off a parallel supplier approval process where a user would request for a new supplier to come on board and capture detail associating with that supplier. Obviously, they don't need to capture all the detail. The supply administration function can populate that out and more fully flesh it before it's approved or authorized. Fraction also supports quite a lot of customization. In this particular case, we've set up the supplier for diversity management, but any number of user fields can be configured for your particular environment. And then this demo was set up for an auctioneer, so I'm just going to add, these dimensions were added, and are really reporting dimensions. So I'm going to save that particular request. I'm going to show you briefly how requests from a catalog can be created. So catalogs are essentially self-managed lists of items, and we've tried to create a much friendlier, smoother environment where, for instance, users can navigate in a graphical environment fairly similar to a shopping experience and identify goods or services that they want to acquire that have been already pre-negotiated with the company. And we can store quite a lot of information, whether it's visual information on the items, whether it's QR codes, any kind of additional supporting information, and add these through to our shopping cart kind of experience. And at the end of the day, when we've finished, we can just go simply to our shopping cart and interrogate that, add any kind of metadata that we might want to add, and then simply add that through to my requisition. So it's a fairly simple user interface specifically to deal with raising or capturing these sort of line items. And while that happens in the background, I'm going to go through to, you can see these items have now been added to my requisition. A couple of things to note: Fraction allows you complete flexibility in terms of having a single requisition that relates to multiple suppliers, multiple approval or authorization workflows. So I'm going to go send that off an approval routing, and based on the rules of these approval routings, various managers would be notified of the need to approve or authorize a transaction either in-app or via email. So I'm going to go through a requisition that I've already approved just to show you the process from an expediency perspective. Here's a request for, well, it was an auctioneer, so they bought some gavels. And we can see this request is now in a closing state. It's gone through an entire purchasing cycle. We can see that as a manager, I would have access to the budget impact of this particular spend. So here we can see in real time the impact of our budgets against projects, against locations in this particular demo setup. We can see the risk analytics associated to it. In other words, are these normal prices that we're paying for gavels compared to what we paid previously? We can also see supply analytics. In other words, is this a vendor that we normally do business with? And we can see the spending patterns associated with this vendor over time. And likewise, employee behavior, we're able to interrogate to see who was involved in this requisition and what is their typical spending patterns and behavior. And these are the tools that allow us then to either approve or authorize this expenditure. We're very strong on audits and the ability to view the audit trail associated with the transaction. So here we see everyone who touched this requisition, what they did, what the next move of this requisition was. And we try to provide that in a visually appealing way. So here's the entire life cycle of this particular transaction that's available to anyone with the correct rights to use this application. I just want to draw your attention briefly to alerts. This is part of the feature that I spoke about earlier in the beginning. This is our active policy management. And in this particular case, there are a number of rules that have been breached, and they relate to just getting to a certain percentage of budget for a particular period. And as a manager who is responsible for receiving these alerts, and although these alerts can be, anyone can subscribe to them, that is the right level, this is basically the process where in real time, I'd be notified of a transaction where in this particular case, this is the rule that's been breached, and I'm able to intervene at some point. So that's a very high level of raising a requisition, approving it, and I won't process the order of the invoices because of time, but certainly happy to do that at a later stage. Just wanted to bring up some of the other requisition capabilities as well. So if your organization has reps or people that need to be able to submit expense claims, mileage claims, or whatever the case might be, the same application allows us to manage mileage, manage meals, manage any kind of entertainment requests. And each one of these request types has very specific information pertaining to that kind of spending activity. So it is deassociated from the accounting transaction, but provides color for the manager to be able to approve or authorize. In this case, who did I go visit? What is the mileage rate for me as an organization? However, if it was a meal type, perhaps I'm looking for who did I take out? Who were the guests that were involved? And what was the venue that we went? So all of these are configurable and tailored to that particular organization's requirements. And likewise for travel, if we were ordering travel and I want to do perhaps book a flight in advance, and this is not expense reimbursables, I could determine where my travel start and end dates are, why I'm traveling for this particular case, and the various subcomponents of travel. So for instance, if it was flight, I would want to know what airport do I intend departing from, where do I intend going, what are my flight classes. And the purpose of technology like this is to make it easier for managers and for people raising requisitions to very simply and easily add all the information that they need, and for the manager to be able to have enough comfort to approve or authorize that kind of expenditure. So I'm cognizant of the time. We're coming up to 18 minutes. I just wanted to finish by sort of sharing more on that alert management process, which is really how our system drives changing spend management for the better. And these are typically the areas that we can look at. We can look at actions, duplicate items, any variance management we want, look at risk. So I can identify in a particular approval workflow, and you can see the logic of the way we set up these rules. I want to see any manager who submits multiple requisitions that cumulatively exceed a value in a particular period. And I want the following roles or the following people to be advised of that information. And this is the way that the system can look to see whether someone, for instance, is splitting orders and approving constantly to the same vendor, so that if we looked at their spend in a particular period of time, it would normally breach their approval or authorization levels. And on the workflow approval setup, really powerful tools to help configure approval structures, to make sure how do we deal with managers that are tardy, how do we deal with multiple approvals at a certain level, how do we deal with the granularity of approving down to what is the dollar amount for this individual for capital goods versus IT equipment versus expense claims, etc. A strong focus on granularity here. And with that, I thank you very much for the time. We're coming up to 20 minutes on the dot. Adrian, much appreciated. I think, are you able to take back the presenter controls and hand over to our friends to discuss shipping?
I just have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Adrian, hopefully you can see my screen right now.
We can.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Adrian, and thank you, Stanton. Again, my name is Matt St. John, one of the sales executives here at V Technologies, and today we're going to go through Starship and our integration with Acumatica, process an international shipment. But before I get going, just so everyone knows, Starship is a multi-carrier, type of shipment, so parcel, LTL, again, international solution. And the nice thing with the Starship program, as you're going to see, is as a shipper, technically, I really just need access to Starship. I can work in Starship all day, and I really don't need to jump back and forth between Acumatica and the Starship program. So on my screen now, again, is that Starship program. And this is the main screen, so this is where I can see all my, in this case, I'm going by shipment records. But as you can also see, we can pull by sales orders or even by customer record. If we pull by sales order record, of course, we're going to bring in all the order header, line item, and detail from the sales order. And as a shipper, once I ship and process that order receive my shipping documents. Behind the scenes, Starship's going to send back all that shipment information, so tracking, freight amount, so on and so forth. But with using the sales order as the source, it will also automatically generate the shipment record or create the shipment record inside of Acumatica. Okay, so could save a step. That way you don't have to enter in sales orders and then also enter in, these shipment records. All right, so right from here, of course, I just have narrowed down my search result. You see, we can get into applying filters. We can get into mainly typing in the shipment record up top here. If your pick sheets or whatever you're having to ship against using to ship, if that's barcoded, with Starship can even use just a regular wedge type scanner and scan in barcoded information. So from here, I'm just going to grab this one single order, and I could click the little checkbox and go to create shipment, or as I just did, I went over to that little truck icon. And really what Starship's doing with Acumatica, we're just data mapping fields, and we're going to pull in again all that, in this case, shipment record information. So here's our source. Of course, that's where we're pulling the information from inside of Acumatica. Here's our sender information. With Starship, we can help automate anyone doing drop shipments or blind shipments. This sender information, we could set this up to really populate any information that you need. Here I'm just using a custom address ID, but you can set up different address IDs and have Starship automatically, look at that, change it. So again, if you're doing drop shipments or a blind shipment where I need to show it's coming from a different company, or maybe company and address, Starship most certainly supports that. Recipient information, this is just that ship to, originating from the sales order in this case. Starship will do address validation. We do validate ZIP +4, so we're going to help save on those address correction fees. And underneath the transportation tab, this is basically just automatically selecting carrier, service, billing, account information. And this is just looking at the ship via codes that are set up inside Acumatica. So Starship can automatically, as you see here, select UPS. We're going standard to Canada. Anyone doing third-party or collect shipments, we can also streamline that process where this could come in and it's automatically going to select third-party. We have our own database where you can set up and store your customer's account information, so their address and, of course, their account numbers. So we can automate that whole process. I'm just going to switch that back to prepaid and close this one box. Shipment details. So really, these are all our shipment options. And you see here, I can look at Acumatica fields. For instance, on this one, I had insurance selected, so Starship's automatically selected it. The quantum view, or the carrier-generated email. In my system, I actually have this field defaulted, and I'm, of course, always bringing in an email address. And then I have my system set up that, as you see here, I've checked exception, so I'm only going to use a carrier-generated email if there was a delay or an exception with this shipment. Okay, and I'll show you why my system's set up that way in a little bit. All right, but just know, name of the game with Starship is to help streamline your shipping process. So less things as a shipper I have to click on, I have to manually type in, the better. All right, and I'm just going to minimize that. Now, under the packaging, I'll drill down into the packaging grid here. So this is where I can get into seeing that item to box detail. And what I'll do is just kind of expand these two boxes. So with Starship, just so you know, item to box detail, not really required. It is nice because as you're going to see with our documents, when we print documents, we can show customers what's in each box. And then I'm going to show you in a little bit Starship's email program where you can actually send an email and show your customers what's in each box. But with my system here, I also have for this Acer laptop, as you see, it's come in, it's already in a package called Acer laptop. So my system, I have a packaging scenario already set up for this laptop. Starship knows, hey, every time they ship the laptop, I know they put it in a laptop box. So there it is, already packaged for me. My remaining items, there's no packaging scenario. So again, my system just set up, put them in Starship's default package called custom packaging. From here, maybe I know this hard drive can fit in that laptop box, so I can simply drag and drop to get into doing that item to box detail. Over here we can add single packages. I can add items. So if I did need additional boxes, I could add them, and again, either drag and drop my items. Now this box here is right now again default custom package. I'm just going to drill down in, and this drop down, this is just part of Starship's database where you can set up and store your own custom boxes. Nice thing with using custom boxes is I'm going to jump over here. As you can see, the dimensions will automatically populate for those boxes. Now, actual weight, my system, I'm pulling the weights from inside of Acumatica. Of course, if I had a scale set up, I could automatically grab weights from a scale. I can manually type that in. And then next door to that is bill weight. So in this case here, this 22 pounds, this is the actual dimensional weight for this package. So Starship will do the correct calculation based off the carrier, UPS, FedEx, USPS. Nowadays, dimensional weight or dim weights is a big thing. So when we actually process this shipment, this is going to go out at the 22 pounds, not the 12. So later on, you're not going to get that fee from, again, in this case, UPS, that, hey, you sent that box out at 12. Dimensionally, it should have been 22. Here's the difference. Okay. So that's one way we can get into doing that item to box detail. I'll show you another way here. I can also go up to the package assistant wizard, and I could actually have all my items just come in over on this side. And same thing on the right-hand side, I could add boxes, select the type of box, and drag and drop my items into each package. From there, I can simply click ship and process to then receive all my shipping documents. But I'll just switch back to the main screen here, and I'm just going to drill down into the line item detail. So here's all our line items. Now, the nice thing with Starship is we also have a database for your inventory items. My system item description, class, all that information is coming from inside of Acumatica. Now, a lot of clients, in this case here with international shipments, maybe we don't have this information living inside of our Acumatica or our ERP system. So Starship can store all that information. So here at country of manufacturer, harmonized codes or Schedule B codes, we have our own lookup for that. And of course, any of this information, if it was missing, I could add it, and Starship is automatically going to remember it for next time. Again, just trying to help streamline your shipping process, make it easier for the shipper. Okay? So this information, really, again, any of these fields, if I also have it, say, living in custom or attribute fields inside Acumatica, the way we communicate with the Acumatica program, we can simply change the mappings and point to those fields and have Starship look, oh, you know what? I have that information living in attribute field. So we'll just have Starship look at that field and automatically bring in that information. Okay. Now, down below is where we can get into that live rate shopping. So with Starship, we have integrations with over 24 carriers, and that's parcel as well as LTL. And as you see here, we're going to return your live negotiated contract rate. We'll also return published list rates. So I have list charges, contract charges, and applied charges in Starship terms. That is just actually plus or minus any freight rules. So with Starship, I'll show you in a minute, we can get into setting up what we call freight rules. Now, with this rating, you can see I had Starship automatically run it. From here, I can manually change, select a different carrier service if needed. But I can also set up what we call ship via rules, where Starship can automatically run the rating. And based off a rule, a lot of our clients just do, hey, you know what, Starship, you rate it and automatically select the least expensive carrier and service, or maybe least expensive, least amount of business or shipment days here. As you can see over here, we show business days, the estimated delivery. So again, that whole process can be automated as well. Now, Starship, we have the integrations with the carriers. We also have integrations with e-commerce sites and shopping carts, so like a Magento, Shopify, Amazon, eBay. So with Starship, what we can do is, in this case here, I'm going to bring that information into probably Acumatica. So maybe I have an order on my, from Amazon. I can create that sales order inside Acumatica and then process the shipment this way. And with that integration with the e-commerce site or even one of those shopping carts, Starship's going to write back all the tracking shipping information back into Acumatica, but it will also update the e-commerce or the shopping cart. So it's a nice thing with those integrations that we have with those e-commerce sites and shopping carts. All right. So kind of drag this whole shipment process out by showing you all the different options. But really, when we bring this in and we're ready to do the shipping process, I can, again, click this ship and process button, or I can go up under shipment. And here we also have shortcut keys. So I could save this shipment. Maybe I want to stage it. I have an item that's quite not ready to go out yet, but I can start the process, save it, come back and finish it later. I can ship and process, or maybe I even need a return label. So I can do a ship and create return label. So in this case here, we'll just do the ship and process. Now, normally what's going to happen once I click ship and process, your shipping documents are just automatically going to start generating and printing, thermal label or laser to a laser printer. Now, for the sake of the demo or for this webinar, I'm just going to preview everything. I'm also using our smart label, and as you can see, a smart label will print the shipping label and packing list together. So this would need to go to a laser printer, but most certainly we can send a shipping label to a thermal printer or printers. I do have clients that, hey, UPS's label is different size than the FedEx, so UPS labels go to one thermal printer, FedEx labels go to a different one. The packing list, if you want Starship to generate that, that can also go to a thermal printer, or of course you can send it to a laser printer and print it to paper. Now, our documents can also be customized, so here I've added our logo, but unlimited templates for each of the documents. And on each of those templates, you can also get into assigning printing rules. So again, hey, maybe we're doing a drop shipment, blind shipment, and I can't show that it's coming from my company, or I need to have a different logo on here. We can create a template for that scenario, assign that printing rule, and then of course Starship would only generate that document when that rule or scenario came into play. So that's box one. Box two, Starship can also generate your international documents. Now, we also fully support any contract options or service options that the carriers offer. So in this case with UPS, I know they do the paperless where they can electronically send the commercial invoice NAFTA forms. So we fully support that. But as you see, Starship can also generate those documents. If this was an LTL shipment, same thing. We can do bill of lading forms, pallet labels. But on the documents, all the order header, line item information is automatically going to generate. And in my case here, I've customized it so it's signed and dated. Again, as a shipper now, I don't have to stop and manually fill out any of these forms. It's already populating for me. And this is just an example of the certificate of origin, in this case using a NAFTA form. Okay. So again, once I ship and process, I'm going to receive my shipping documents, and then I'm just going to go back to the main Starship screen where I just can go through that whole process again with my next shipment. And what I'll do is jump back into Acumatica and refresh the shipment records here so I can show you the write back. All right, so we just shipped order 2219. So as you can see now, we're going to mark the order confirmed, and we're also going to add a note. I have my system set up to add a note, so you'll see that little note icon is highlighted. Now on the write back, I'm going to my shipping settings. There's my freight cost. So that, what we're writing back is what the carrier is going to charge me, or my live negotiated rate with the carrier. And then the freight price is, of course, plus or minus any freight rules. So with Starship, as I mentioned, you can get into setting up freight rules. They can be percentages, min-maxes, of course, can be a flat rate. So I just had one that's, hey, automatically add $3 to every shipment. But we can break them down all the way down to maybe by customer. Maybe certain customers, they get a discount, or even, hey, it's free shipping over X amount of dollars. I even have clients that do it by line and detail. Oh, I'm shipping something fragile, so I have to use additional bubble wrap. So they'll do a flat rate anytime, say, item 123 is on an order. Now, we're also going to write back that box ID. So these are those boxes that I had set up inside Starship, reverse translating the box that each item went into. Here's our tracking numbers. Custom reference 1 and 2, that's up to you what writes back there. As you can see, I'm just writing back carrier service as well as the ship date. And as I also mentioned, the notes, same thing here. It's up to you what you want to write back. So I just have mine set up to write back shipped on, the weight, the package, the dimensions. This was we're actually working with a client that they wanted to see all this different information. But completely up to you what you want to write back there. But as you can see, Starship will most certainly write that information back as well. All right. So that's the process between Acumatica and Starship and the write back. Now with Starship, we also will give you our e-notify program. And this is the program. This is why my system's set up to only use the carrier generated emails if there was a delay, because I've created my own template that has my company logo on there, not UPS, not FedEx. These are very easy to create. We can pull in Acumatica fields. Here I have the sales order number, and if I had a PO number, that would have populated. I'm telling my customers how it's being shipped, where it's going to. Again, hey, look out for 2 packages, estimated delivery dates coming from the carrier, so that's accurate. And then, of course, I'm doing that item to box detail, so I'm showing my customers each box and what was in each package. Tracking numbers are also hyperlinked, so these will actually take them right back to the carrier's website. Again, in this case, it would bring them right to UPS. But using these, really nice. It can help reduce those inbound calls of customers just calling up looking, hey, where's my shipment? And with the e-Notify program, again, it's included, does not require any additional seats or licenses. Just like our printing documents, you can create unlimited email templates. And then, of course, on each template, instead of printing rules, you can do emailing rules. So here I have a promo code. Maybe I only want that to go to certain customers. I can create that rule. And, of course, Starship would only use this template and send it to those customers. And also with Starship is our dashboard program. So what I'll do is jump back into Starship and go to dashboard. So here is, I just have a brief overview, but as you can see, I have all these different looks to the program. So this is just a brief overview showing me, as you see, shipments, packages, costs, orders processed, and we've actually even now added a heat map, which I'll just slide down over here and drop in this way. So I can even see where all my shipments, the hot spots of where I'm shipping my products to. All right. So again, really just a brief overview. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of the day for our webinar, and then I'll hand it back to Adrian. So if there's any questions, we can answer those.
Thank you so much, Matt. Great presentation. I'm going to flash up the contact information here. Should see that on my screen. Perfect. And I do have Ian's contact information on the screen. So he's a great first level contact for everybody. Thank you so much. Everybody take care. Happy Thanksgiving next week.
Thank you, Adrian. Much appreciated. And everyone, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, and have a great holiday.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.